Well, it's really good to have you joining us for this. I think it's the fourth of our 1, 2, 3 Go lunchtime conversations. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Sue Bradshaw, who is a member of the local church where I'm a member here in March in Cambridgeshire. And we're going to be hearing a bit from Sue in a moment. I just want to remind you, though, of 1, 2, 3 Go initiative as you begin to join us. I just want to put this slide up. The 1, 2, 3 Go initiative is all about creatively sharing one gospel 2 by 2 over 3 days this Easter. These lunchtime conversations are here to inspire, encourage, and to support you as you perhaps plan to do something with your church and through your church to creatively share the gospel that we've been given, the good news of Jesus Christ and what he's done for us and what he does in us when we encounter him. And that's the vision that we have thousands of people across this country doing that over the Easter weekend, Good Friday, Easter Saturday, Easter Sunday, creatively finding ways to share this good news. And I'm going to show this again later, but if you want to connect with us, do go to the website 123go.life where you'll find more about the project. If you want to join our mailing list where we send out probably regular mailings about once a month, and in the build up to Easter, do go to 123go, so bit.ly/123go-interest. If you want to join the list and get a free PDF in the process, then do go to bit.ly/123go top 10, and you'll be able to download a PDF with Chris Duffett's top 10 evangelism ideas for the 1, 2, 3 Go weekend. And of course, maybe you're watching this on the Facebook page, but if you go to facebook.com/123go.life, then like that page and you'll be able to see information on your Facebook feed. But also there is a community for those that are engaging in the project. There's a 1, 2, 3 Go private group, a public group. So if you want to sign up to that from the 1, 2, 3 Go Facebook page as well, that would be great. But Sue, let me get rid of that screen for a moment and go back there. Tell us a bit about yourself. I've said that you're a member of the local church that I'm part of, but just tell us who you are.
Who I am, yeah. Well, I am Sue Bradshaw. Have been part of Centenary Baptist Church in March for 21 years now, and wasn't a Christian before. So, but I have, as a part of my fellowship there, been in a leadership role, part of one of the deacons, part of the leadership team. I have run some courses and house groups and various things, as you do. But my major ministry, indeed, for 13 years out of the nearly 21 years as a Christian, has been with Christians Against Poverty. And I was a debt coach and the centre manager for the Fenland Cap Debt Centre for those 13 years. So, yeah.
And that's partly why I asked you into this lunchtime conversation, because I've been in March a lot shorter time than you have, only the last 18 months or so. And last year, I mean, we've been through this COVID season, but even in the midst of this COVID season, we've been blessed at Centenary to have a number of baptisms. We've got some more in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. But we had 4 baptisms last year, and at least 3 of the people who were baptized mentioned you in their testimony. And I was like, this woman's an evangelist. And I know, when I've said that to you, you're like, oh, no. But I just wanted to talk to you, see if they're to find out more about how God has been using you in being part of these people's journey to faith. And clearly, you mentioned Christians Against Poverty, and CAP has been a big part of that. So, we perhaps can dig into the way that evangelism is part of that ministry of CAP, because most people, well, if people have heard about CAP, they will have heard about the the debt advice and what have you. But where does evangelism fit in that? And how have, in helping people come out of debt, have people found Christ in the process?
No, good question. Well, first of all, when going back some years now, obviously, when our church was seeking God's will for how we could reach out to people in need in our community, and our minister brought some information about Christians Against Poverty, or CAP as we say for short, and he said, well, Christians Against Poverty are first and foremost evangelists who happen to be extremely good debt counsellors. So he introduced it to us as a leadership team as a dual ministry. Yes, to help people become debt-free, but also to become spiritually free. And the two are interwoven right through the process of the debt counselling service. And right from the start, it's introduced, even when a new client rings the new client inquiries line, which is serviced at head office. By the end, or sometimes in between, if they are getting really quite upset and stressed, they offer to pray with them. And the majority of people accept that prayer there and then, are actually quite touched by that. Then, as a debt coach, once we have the appointment through, again, we would ring them, introduce ourselves, and offer to pray with them. At each appointment, whether it had been over the phone or during COVID, of course, or face-to-face. Usually we would visit people in their home and we would always offer to pray with them. And again, most people would accept that and be blessed by that. But during the process of meeting with them and supporting them through their journey out of debt, we were always encouraged to bless them in some way. We've always liked to give them a gift and a hamper at Christmas. Maybe when we've visited, we've taken a cake or a bag of fruit or something. We've always carried and like to give, wherever appropriate, information about our church and what we do, or the church that they are near. Offer Bibles when appropriate as well. And we've been encouraged to run client events. We don't have to do a huge amount, but 3 or 4 throughout the year, some bigger than others, but always a couple of times a year to include a gospel message or a testimony and the opportunity to respond to it and receive prayer. And then for those who have responded, CAP produced what they call Strong Start book packs, which have included a CD, a reminder of what they've done, and a short booklet about their journey ongoing as well, and information about a local church. And that's been wonderful and really helpful. And again, people have been quite touched by that. But then we've also been urged to go the extra mile, as I think you would call it. Really, it all starts by listening and building that relationship. Sometimes just ring them to see how they are if they're going through a difficult spell, but also maybe taking them to court or an appointment. We've been involved in providing something that they really needed at that time, and that can vary from child stair gates, I think we've supplied a few of those, to decorating supplies, and even helping to decorate on a few occasions, or helping them with the garden. I don't know, sometimes, a couple of times we've helped people move house. Quite often people have offered me furniture items and have been able to offer them to clients, but then they haven't always got the wherewithal to transport them. So our car has been used quite a bit as a removal van. We're actually looking to change our car now, so now we've stopped using it for that so much. Yeah. We have been putting that off for a while.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is there's a lot of listening to people, a lot of loving very practically, but also in the midst of that, not letting go of the intention of sharing Jesus explicitly in the midst of that. And I think one of the things in terms of encouraging churches through 123 Go initiative, I think one of the challenges in churches is being able to hold those two things together. Some churches will will, really passionate about evangelism and, be proclaiming the gospel, or engaging in social action, demonstrating God's love, but not doing, so end up doing one or other rather than holding those two things together. And it sounds like there's quite a bit of power in that. Can I just say, as we sort of dig deeper into this, if there are people watching this, which is great, if you've got any questions or anything that Sue says that really inspires you, do just put that in the comments, because it's really good to get the interaction and to know how people are engaging with this. And also let us know where you are and perhaps examples of this that you've seen. But I just want to sort of dig into that sense of holding those two things together, because as I say, other projects will sometimes meet a need but will not preach the gospel. I mean, just you got anything to say about that?
Well, yes. With CAP, we've always been encouraged to share our testimony, and that can be in different ways. CAP actually produce an amazing exchange booklet, which really is their version of a Why Jesus booklet, and that's something that was helpful to me, along with an Alpha course, for instance. So that's been an easy way for me to introduce that, and they encourage us to give that along with our My Story card, which is a short version of our testimony with it. And that's how we started, just giving that out at the end of our first appointment with them. But over the years, that actually progressed, and we were encouraged to actually verbally share our testimony, which, I'll be honest, I found difficult to start with, and found myself actually sharing relevant bits of it as they came out in conversation, really, and not holding back on the part that God had played in those situations. But then we had we had training right at the start and ongoing, to be honest. And then we had, more recently, I think it was about 18 months ago, probably, we had some really good training to help us revisit our testimonies and realise the power of those testimonies. No one can dispute them. They're our stories. No one can argue with them. And we were urged to actually look at our testimonies again to make sure they were up to date, and stress to us that, I mean, I'll be honest, there was lots of good things came out of the training, but two things that particularly impacted me was this, and the fact that it needs to be up to date. God didn't stop working just after our conversion. He's been carrying on, whether you've been a Christian 5 minutes or 50 years or more, and he still keeps carrying on. So it was really important to do that. And the other thing that was suggested was to look out for themes, and perhaps pick one or two things out of your testimony. Something maybe like chaos changing to peace, which it does when your life is chaotic to start with, and then Jesus comes in and starts working his stuff, so to speak. So that was excellent training. So yes, then you find conversations come out from that. Occasionally, we've not even done the official first visit. It's all been listening and evangelism. And we've rebooked another visit to actually go through the Journey Out of Debt booklet and prepare a list of paperwork they need. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that that sense of training and that sense of preparation. I know that sometimes articulating what God's done in our life, we know, that's our experience. That's why we're journeying as Christians, that God is at work, that God has brought transformation, but actually doing a bit of work and thinking through a bit about that in preparation for sharing it probably is a good bit of advice for people. When you're prepared, then when the opportunity comes, it's great that you've got something, that you've got a theme. I know one of the things that Chris Duffett, when I've done some training with received some training with Chris Duffett, he talks about having a 6-word testimony that inspires people to ask you more. So mine would be silent, God spoke, speaking for him, and it just talks about the transformation from being someone who was so shy that if there were 3 people in a room I wouldn't say anything, to hearing God, and meeting with God, and now being in a situation where I will stand at the front of big rooms and talk for him and preach and be involved in all sorts of things. That's the transformation in my life, and just being able to think that through and being able to articulate it. And you say 6 words and then people want to know more. If you say chaos into peace, people are like, well, tell me more about that. And it's being able to do that.
That's good advice.
And it sounds like the training you had with CAP is great. And I'm just going to pick up. We can talk a bit more about this. This gives you an opportunity perhaps to answer Penny's question. I don't know if you can see that on the screen. What if the client has no interest in church and Jesus, but just wants to get out of debt? I'm sure you still care for them. Is that correct?
Oh yes. I mean, obviously, it's an absolute delight if people do want to know more about your Christian faith. And because we're called Christians Against Poverty, you've got a chance in there already, haven't you? And as part of the first appointment, we've always explained who we are and why we do the work we do, and the service as a whole, and ask them a bit about their story. So we're starting to get to know them. But not everybody wants to take that any further, and that's fine. It's meeting them where they are. It's caring for them where they are, and everyone gets the same service. And I hope we've supported them all in the same way as well. It's the crowning glory, isn't it, for someone to come to faith and then, as you've mentioned, Simon, come along to church and be baptised. But that's not going to happen for all of them. Some people literally just want the debt help, and that's the service that we're advertising and offering. So it would be wrong not to care for them and to obviously work well with them.
Yeah, and the love that Jesus offers us is unconditional. He doesn't put those conditions or prerequisites. So the service at CAP and in other contexts that support that people get, it's not dependent upon them, wanting to take that Christian journey. That's just part of what you offer. And I think, I'm just aware, having connected with a number of churches who do a number of outreach activities, whether it's coffee mornings or other sort of knit and natter groups or what have you, and there's almost a reluctance to talk about Jesus. People are coming into a church building sometimes or connecting with a church group, and maybe subconsciously thinking, I've got a spiritual need that I'm looking for some answers to, and Christians hold back from actually sharing the faith and aren't intentionally thinking, what are the opportunities here to be able to offer people Jesus as well as the very practical support that we're offering.
I agree. But I think again the preparation is good. Pray beforehand and ask God to reveal things that He would like you to share. And surprisingly enough, the opportunities can sometimes pop up.
that praying beforehand. I mean, we have been so last year during our 1, 2, 3 Go Easter weekend, last year was all about prayer walking and preparing for this year through prayer. And we're encouraging churches to pray ahead of the 1, 2, 3 Go weekend, because prayer is so essential. This is a work in people's hearts. It's the Spirit has to do that work. It's not work that we can do, and so we need to be we need to be praying. We need to be seeking God's inspiration, just praying for opportunities. And like you say, when we pray, often our eyes are open to those opportunities when we might not otherwise be. So I'm just have a quick look here. So you've talked about keeping our testimonies up to date. You're just saying a bit about why testimonies are so powerful. I know that some people feel that, I can't share my faith because I might be asked a question that I don't know the answer to. And but you're saying actually, when we talk about our experience and we talk about that faith journey, it isn't something people can argue with. They can, take it or leave it, but there's a sense that they can't argue with it. Any more thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, why we talk about testimonies and it's good to share them, but why? But first of all, because God is good and He's working in our lives, and we need to explain that to other people, how otherwise they just don't know. And like I say, they can't be disputed. They're our stories, and they are powerful. I used to think mine wasn't very powerful. I didn't think I was a bad person, for instance. I didn't do drugs, I didn't drink or whatever, so I didn't have that huge impact testimony. But when you actually think back, God's still been working, and there's been differences, and I've been able to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do without him in my life. So yeah, I think it's important that we do share.
Yeah, and there's some sort of sense of vulnerability, isn't there, when we tell our story, that we are, we're listening to people, particularly in this context that you're in. People are being very vulnerable. We're in debt, we're in a difficult situation, and that is very obvious in the context that they've approached CAP for their help. And I guess when we talk a bit about our own story, we're opening ourselves up in a way that they have also opening up, and that sense of I'm trying to think, it was Spurgeon about one beggar showing another beggar where to find bread, and that sense of not that you need to listen to me, or I've got something that I want to force on you. It's actually just sharing. This is the way God's been at work in my life. This is part of the story of who I was before I met Jesus, and this is some of the things that he's brought about transformation in my life. I guess just opening up in ways of being vulnerable. Yeah, it's just having a look through. People are being encouraged by what you're saying. Catherine's pure Christian with a heart to see people saved. Thank you. This is motivating me to do more. It's great. Thank you for listening, Kathleen. I'm sure that's an encouragement too. And then, let me just sort of take that one off. Sorry, just a couple more comments coming in. I'm just reading these. So this, I wonder how much room this will take. There we go. It's quite a long question. It's covered our faces, but Margaret's saying our church runs a food bank, and so far no clients have become regular attendees at church in over 2 years. No doubt COVID's had an effect. Food bank volunteers and staff are very welcoming. Anything else we could try? We've thought of a 2 to 3 questionnaire, particularly targeting parents of young children. What do they need? Are spaces there to be used? Soft play, free refreshments, a warm place to spend a couple of hours. Any experience of this? Just some basic things about sort of responding to that. Maybe I can think of a few things as well.
Yeah. No, I think I like the little questionnaire idea. I think that's good. I must admit, with CAP, we tend to give them just a flyer that shows a little bit about the church and what things go on there. And sometimes that triggers questions as well, which is always good. It's always quite difficult, isn't it, to build that bridge between things that the church do and getting people into church. And sometimes I question, is that what we're supposed to be doing anyway, or are we supposed to be getting out of the church more? But of course, we would love people to come into church and be quite part of the church family, and we love to see people baptised. And we know that's all part of God's plan. So what else could you do? I think sometimes, actually, I'm going to go back to sharing your testimony. Sometimes when you get talking to people, a little bit of it could be relevant, and that might be a way of encouragement. Simon, you say you've got a few ideas as well.
Yeah. So I'm glad Margaret's asked a question, and this is sort of putting a different hat on. So we've got the 1, 2, 3 go role, and I'm pleased to be involved in 1, 2, 3 go initiative, but I also do some work with Fresh Expressions of Church. Would encourage people to explore exactly what you said, Sue, that sense of not always thinking about getting people into church, but about taking church to where people are at. And I'm just going to wave a couple of books quickly. There's a book called Godsend, look for that on Amazon, by Michael Moyner, and he's also written a book called 21st Century Christian, Following Jesus Where Life Happens. And those books are both about listening, loving and serving, building relationships, but then exploring discipleship and seeing church emerge in those contexts. And so food bank, one of the ideas that might be around food bank is to have invite people to prepare a meal together. Not food bank can sometimes be, we're giving you something, something that's a lot more mutual, where actually we're going to come together as a group of half a dozen people. We're going to prepare a meal together, and maybe one of us will show the others how to cook a favorite meal, and then we'll sit down and eat it together. And I think that sense of eating together, of moving away from a client provider type relationship to much more of a community where we're all journeying together is possibly one way of doing that. I think need to connect with people where they're at. And one of the things that I think that and I think we've realized this particularly over COVID, but I think it was there before, is people are longing for community. I think one of the things that the church offers, it offers a number of things, but it offers a place to be part of, to belong to be a family within. And I think people are looking for that. So I would, Margaret, suggest perhaps just getting a group of people together, perhaps in a church kitchen or maybe around someone's house, and just preparing a meal together and then eating together. In that, just one more promo, there is a website called sharingjesus.life, where there's some specific resources for how to explore sharing Jesus in the context of an existing outreach activity. And I'd encourage Margaret and others to look at that. I might just put a brief comment in a moment. So there's some really interesting questions here about, after people have been baptized, you encourage them to be church members, and that's in each individual context that's going to look a bit different. As Baptist, church membership is quite important, and I know my general approach as a Baptist minister has always been to encourage people to be part of the church as soon as they're baptized. We're all on a journey, and that baptism marks the beginning of that journey, not some sort of magic point where we've got so much sorted. I just think that involving people in church life straight away is really a good idea. So you talked about putting your story, your own testimony on a card. So to just clarify, you've written that out, and that's something that you give to new people who encounter CAP. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's typed up actually. I mean, CAP have got all organised, and there's a template, and then it comes off as an A5 piece of card that you fold in half. So it's got a nice cover to it, and it says my story on the front. It's got a prayer of salvation on the back, and my actual story, and then a few words there. And we would tuck that inside the Amazing Exchange booklet and give it to them. That's great. So it's not impersonal. It's that this person who's giving me this booklet to read through, here's their story as well. Do you mind, Sue, if I ask you what your story is? What testimony have you put in there? Is that okay? That's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind. Well, I wasn't brought up in a Christian home. My parents weren't Christians at all. Their families weren't Christians. The only time they started looking into faith, I'll be honest, they looked in not very helpful directions, but never mind. We did, though, have Christian assemblies when I was at school, which was good. And so I was brought up with a bit of an understanding of God and Jesus. So I believed, but that's where it stayed. I didn't do anything about it. I didn't even realise I needed to do anything about it, if I'm honest. Didn't give it a thought. And life just sort of plodded on as it does. Well, the time our children were teenagers, life wasn't particularly great at the time. They weren't doing very well. Our daughter ended up having a breakdown. We ended up losing our business and going bankrupt. See a connection with CAP, of course, there, can't you? I didn't expect God to use that one, let's face it. But after a little while, my husband had become a Christian by then, but he wasn't a Christian previously. And then he
he felt the call of God, that's all I can say, to go to a different church. We went to Centenary, and the minister came up to us either the end of that service or the following week just to explain that they were going to be starting an Alpha course within a few weeks, and invited us to go along to that. Now, for my husband, that was quite a good fill in any blanks, refresh or whatever, but for me, it was life transforming, because that really did answer questions that I'd never even thought to ask, and it basically, the penny finally dropped, put it that way. And that Easter was the first Easter that it had real significance to me. Now, very shortly afterwards, my work was likely to be changing. Either I would need to go, or one or two of my staff would need to go, because we lost our main contract that my particular team worked on. Well, then I had a week off booked, and at those times, the job centre used to have cards in the windows that they would turn to the outside at the weekend. And my husband and I went uptown in March, when the job centre was in March, of course, and we both went to different shops for some reason, agreed to meet outside the job centre. So I got there first and was just having a nose, sort of half thinking, well, I don't know, maybe it should be me that should be finding another job. And two cars literally jumped out at me as if they were highlighted. But the timescale was really short. If I hadn't have had that following week off, I would have missed applying for them. So I went into the job centre on the Monday, and I was able to apply for both these, given the information, but I literally had to get my applications done and in the post that day. So yes, it was a rush, but I got them in. I was interviewed for both and given the post that I preferred the sound of, which was working as a training and employment advisor for NACRO. If you like, it was my first people helping job. But then in just under a year, I was facing redundancy. And I thought, oh my goodness, is this part of your plan, Lord? I didn't expect this. Yeah, I was so sure that God had led me to that, and I still think so. But it turned out it was really good training for the next job I went for. It was just a little bit odd, in as much as I was helping trainees in the day do applications. I'm thinking, I think I've got this one to do myself at home tonight. It was a little bit strange. But and I was told, actually, when I got the following job, again, a people helping job in housing options for the council, that it was my previous job that really had enabled me to get that. And things settled, and we knew some peace and space, which was lovely. Our faith was growing, getting more and more involved in the church, became part of the leadership team as a deacon. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we as a church were seeking what we needed to be doing. And that's where CAP came in. And I was one of 4 of us that went up to CAP head office to see if this was right for our church. It took us a little while to get things all in place, but then I became the centre manager. Now, some years later, we really felt, or I particularly felt, that we were being called to expand the area we were covering with CAP. And I was getting a bit frustrated. There was nothing really coming back from the church, no clear guidance from God. And I can remember actually being in the shower at the time, having a bit of a moan at him and telling him that if we were supposed to expand this, I needed to know, because I needed to apply to, I was still working for the council, I needed to apply to them to reduce my hours further, to increase hours for CAP. And I said to him, if you have to put it in neon lights, I need to know. And straight away, I was reminded of literally CAP in, not neon lights, but they were in lights. So that gave me the confidence to go back to the church and actually say, I know we need to do this. We just need to work out how we're going to do it. And yeah, we went from there.
Brilliant.
But things haven't always been easy, let's face it. We're not promised an easy life when we become Christians. And I have to say 2014 was a difficult year for us, if we're honest. My husband became very poorly. No one was finding out why. It ended up he'd got a brain tumour, which had to be removed. But even that day, when he was in Adam Brooks under surgery, it was more like it was a retreat day for me. I was walking around the site and sort of staying near because I still had some of his things that they would need on the ward later. And I just knew such peace that God gave us. And Tony had been so peaceful, even though we'd had to be on ward for 7 o'clock and he didn't go down to 1 or whatever it was, you know. It was that peace that transcends all understanding. And I was sitting back on the main site at Addenbrooke's when somebody came along and just said, "Why, I've got to ask you, why are you smiling?" And I didn't realise I was. And I said, "Oh, I didn't know I was." He said, "Yes, you're sitting there smiling." I said, "Well, actually, I was praying because my husband's undergoing surgery." And they just went, "Oh," well, I walked away, but I thought, I don't know what God will do with that, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, Sue. As you've taught, it's that what struck me is all the things that seemed to be maybe painful at the time or you couldn't understand, God has used in terms of, you know, the experience of going bankrupt, that God has used you powerfully to be able to, you know, just empathize with the people that you're working with through CAP. The job that you took being good preparation for CAP and for the other work that you've done. And just, you know, God does do that. I mean, that's my testimony too, that God will use things that seem at the time you're asking questions, why is this happening, Lord? And he is able to redeem those difficult times for his glory. We're coming to an end. I just will remind people of just in a moment of websites to go to and what have you. But just we've talked about the very practical love. We've talked about being prepared to share faith when those opportunities arise. Before, when we were preparing this, you talked to me as well about opportunities just to be with people. You know, I think it talks about in Scripture about rejoicing with those who rejoice and mourning with those who mourn. And you've had some of that experience in CAP. And I just, you know, perhaps that might be a good place to sort of to end.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't want to come across as preachers. That's not what we're here for. But we do need to be real and willing to be open and vulnerable. And sometimes all we can do is cry with people, and that's fine. And forgive me if I start doing that as I just relate an example. But I do remember the time that a befriender, that's a support worker that would always come with the deck coach, we went to see new clients just before Christmas to take them some gifts and a hamper. They hadn't actually had their first appointment. They were waiting for that. And the lady started telling us how she was really struggling with her grief of losing baby twins. If I remember rightly, I'm pretty certain it was twins, a few years before. Now, as she spoke and cried, I found all I could do was join in with her tears. I really felt her pain. But if I'm honest, I think I also felt my own pain too. And yes, they're starting. That was only about 6 weeks since their own son had died, and admittedly not as a baby. He was an adult, but the pain was still very raw. Fortunately, my befriender was absolutely brilliant, and whereas I couldn't speak, she could, and she explained the love of Jesus, and that he feels our pain too, that he is our comforter. And she went on to explain what he did for us on the cross. I felt I'd been pretty useless, and excuse me, I'm not doing well here, but God uses this too, and it can help to build the relationships. In this case, I found a Christian book shortly afterwards, which I thought might help her. So I bought that, and I actually read it, and it helped me too, although it was more focused on the loss of a young child. So I wrote a letter and sent that book to her, as she had decided she wasn't ready to work with CAP. And I think that was the right decision, but I hope it helped her in her grief and in bringing her a step closer to God.
Yeah. You've just demonstrated, Sue, I think your heart for people. So sometimes and yeah, sometimes people are turned off evangelism as Christians because they sort of see a formula and they think, if only you say this and then you do this, and it starts to treat people as if they're not people. And what you've talked about is that real heart of God, that compassion for the people you're sharing the gospel with. It people aren't on targets or numbers, but they are people with stories, and when you connect with them on a human level, when you open yourself, and as you've done, you've been very vulnerable, very publicly today, and appreciate that sense of connecting with people at a heart level rather than just people can see through that, and they can recognize, and I think the reality is that we don't offer people a problem-free life. What we offer them is someone to journey through life and all of the challenges it throws at us. That's the good news, is that Jesus, we've just celebrated Christmas, Emmanuel, God with us. That's the difference that God makes, that he journeys with us in the midst of the life that we're experiencing, in the midst of bankruptcy, as well as getting practical support to come out of debt. There is as an opportunity for someone to minister to you, to show his love and his comfort through yourself and through others. And Sue, I want to thank you for sharing with me. I know, as I said, we've had Chris and we've had Yinka, both of whom who have ministries of evangelism, full time, and that's who they are and what they do. And I know you reluctantly wear that badge if I give it to you, but I think it illustrates that God, if we are open to God. You talked about preparing in prayer. You talked about preparing in terms of being ready to tell our story. You talked about the context, which is about practical love and support. And I know that is, you go the extra mile in relationships. You do offer God's unconditional and sacrificial love to people. And in that context, people will ask you why, and you've had the opportunity to share that with people. And I want to thank you for your ministry at Centenary, and I want to encourage others to be inspired by you and your example and your humility too. I think, if we think it's all down to us, then we end up in difficulty, because it is all down to God, but he invites us to be part of that too. Let me just, as we close, I want to just put the information back on the screen. So the 123 Go initiative, this lunchtime conversation has been in some ways to prepare and inspire you for creatively sharing one gospel 2 by 2 over 3 days this Easter. And if you go back through the comments, you'll see a couple of links in there. Do go to our website, 123go.life, join our mailing list, or if you want to join the mailing list and get a top 10 3D PDF with some ideas for how your church might engage with this project, go to bit.ly/123go top 10. And what we're encouraging you to do, sign up as an individual, get the information, and then take it to your church. We had this discussion at our church yesterday, didn't we, Sue, about how your church might get involved in this, the different ideas that you might take up, and we encourage people to do this through their church community. So sign up as an individual, get the information, then take it to your church and get them to sign up. On the website, there's a place for churches to sign up, register there, and then tell us what you're up to over Easter. And we pray you'll be inspired to creatively share the good news. Let me just pray as we close, and thank you for joining us, those of you that have. Father, we thank you for Sue. I want to thank you for the way that she's been an obedient servant of yours, that you have enabled her both to demonstrate your love very practically through CAP and its ministry. And we give you thanks for CAP and those that work for it, those that have started it, and those across the country that minister through it. We thank you for being able to hold together this desire to show the unconditional love of God in very practical ways, whilst not letting go of the desire to share in words the opportunity for people to go through life with you rather than without you. And we thank you for the good news that you give to us, and we thank you for opportunities that we might have even today to share that good news with others. Bless us, we pray, Lord, and bless the 123 Go initiative. Inspire people to take the opportunity of Easter to share that gospel that you've given us. Lord, we pray this in your name and for your glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you again, Sue. Thank you, everyone who's watched this live, or if you've caught this as a recording, bless you. Do visit the website, and we look forward to catching up with you in preparation for Easter this year, when we'll be on the streets taking one gospel 2 by 2 over those 3 days. Bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.